art style? How do we find our art style? Is it something we have to go out and find? Is it something that comes naturally? When will it come? So in this video, I thought we would have a little look at some of the art styles I've had over the years. And I've been painting and drawing for a long time, and I've had art styles that I ran with for quite a long time. I thought that was my style and ended up just completely dumping it. And since taking up art again, not painting for about a decade and then starting again just a couple of years ago, I've been experimenting with lots of different styles. I've got sort of like pretty little watercolors and even some abstract paintings. And so I thought I'd show you some of the styles that I've had, and even the ones from over a decade ago that I completely dumped if I can find some old photos. And look at how I've sort of developed my own style naturally, and so hopefully you might find this video helpful. Okay, so this is some drawings that I did, I think in my 20s, I think, so quite a long time ago. And I went through this kind of like anime phase, and I really wanted to draw these sort of Japanese characters and things, but it was not something that I found very easy. I found it really, really difficult. So this sort of phase, it didn't last very long at all. But I got some other drawings here that I did. It's another sort of anime drawing that I did, but I kind of closed off from that sort of style. It wasn't my thing at all. I found it really, really hard, and I think with there being so many amazing anime artists out there, I was like, oh, it just wasn't my thing, and it was a phase that came and went pretty quickly. But what did stay with me was drawing little cartoons and things like that, and I think that's something that I've always done over the years. Again, very, very different style. This is almost like a sort of anime style, and then a sort of much more kind of sort of English style, I suppose, of cartoons, sort of children's story type thing. This drawing actually was inspired by this just goes to show that inspiration can really come from anywhere. This was actually inspired by a bathroom tile, and there was a bathroom tile in my bathroom that looked like this elephant head like this, and I used to stare at it all the time and always find it, think, oh, it looks like an elephant. So I literally drew it and turned it into Henry the elephant here, and gave him a little friend, Polly, and then turned it into a little story. But it kind of didn't go anywhere from that. So my cartoons never really went further than that as a style as such. And but I've always drawn, especially these little mice, has always been something that I like drawing and stuff, but it was never really something that I continued with. I always saw it as like a sort of experimental thing, and I've tried different sort of watercolor paintings and different styles. I really liked these artists that would do these flowers and foliage watercolors and things like that. And there's another little watercolor flower. I've even tried different watercolor flowers with using pen as well, sort of more illustrative flowers, but it was not something that I was ever really satisfied with or really liked. I didn't like the sort of end result that I came up with. Although I still like doing these sort of things sometimes. It still wasn't my style. It was something that I just experimented with and then sort of moved on from it really. But I have tried different watercolours. I do a lot of watercolour painting, and I went into this phase of going into landscapes. I really liked some of these artists that do these sort of Parisian style watercolours, and see if I got some more here. I don't know if there's any more in this pad. It's just some drawings. But again, these more sort of like watercolour towns sort of scenes with these sort of hazy sunshine and stuff. And although I was quite pleased with this one, I still felt like it was something that I really struggled with, and I tried adding pen to them. This is more like a sort of Cornish town, seaside little town somewhere. I even tried larger scale ones. This is one in Worcester, I think, and these were some local barns that I painted beginning of this year. I actually really liked this one. The lighting was really lovely. in real life. I didn't paint outside. I still get really nervous about painting outside. But I just took a photo, a selection of photos, and then went back to the studio and to paint them. And I really liked the fact the contrast between the sunshine and the shadow was really lovely. And that was in spring. But I've always found with these sort of paintings, for me, they take a lot of time and they take a lot of detail, and it still wasn't something I felt I could really express myself and just enjoy the process. So although I've painted these sort of paintings, I just think doing buildings was always just very time consuming for me, and not something I really wanted to pursue as my style, as like my main style. And there's some more pretty awful, I think, little watercolours and stuff, and you can see the pad didn't continue, so I don't know, maybe I'll return to that one day. I've often thought about doing a Domestica course on watercolour, like sort of townscape and things. But I've tried portraiture as well. Again, another very, very time consuming way of drawing for me personally, something I've always struggled with. This is a very heavy pen drawing. And again, some more sort of landscapey town watercolour style that I did. So that was my watercolour town phase, as it were. And then I kind of really wanted to mix it up, and when I did do the 100 days of painting at the beginning of the year, and I'm still doing one now over on Instagram if you want to check those out on Instagram, see if I can find some from the first 100 days. And some mountains. So this was from my first 100 days, as you can see, 77, 78, 79, and just a sort of triptych of mountains at different times of the day. You've got the morning, during the day, and then at dusk, and the different lighting effects and stuff. And I think this is when I began to find my new style, and I think this will be a good time to actually put some of my old paintings in from over a decade ago, the style I got stuck with. And I mean, I'll talk about this in a video in more detail about why I stopped painting and why I quit this style. And but a long story short, I was painting this style and I was selling on eBay, and I was doing these diptychs and triptychs where you get two canvases and you put them together to make one painting. And I was selling them, I was doing okay, and I did a few exhibitions locally, and I always remember this last exhibition that I did. And there was a book, I kind of got cajoled into doing this exhibition by my parents at the time, and it's not something I really wanted to do. But I went with it, I went along, and I invited friends and family, which is such a bad idea when you do an exhibition because friends and family don't buy your art. But this exhibition was running and members of the public came in, and there was a comment that was left in the sort of art book I had on the side, and it always stuck with me, saying the paint, I can't remember exact words, but this man had said that the lighting was very flat. And I read that and I was obviously heartbroken, but I actually took it on board and I thought, you know what, he's right. The lighting was so bad and my paintings were flat, and I felt they were just quite amateurish, and I just couldn't get out of this style. It was like I was painting because that's what people wanted to buy, and I think it was just hindering my artistic progress. So I literally stopped painting for over a decade. Not saying if you get stuck in a style you have to stop painting for a decade, but I did. So when I started again, and I last year, and I did the 100 days painting at the beginning of this year, the first 100 days, I just started really playing with light, and this is a really good example actually of me looking at colour and light, and I think it's always something that I've really tried to find in my art. So, and I ended up sort of with this style, and but I did branch out into a little bit of abstract, because I still felt a little bit kind of like, oh, this is quite difficult, time consuming, and I'm a very lazy artist, so I like things to just be good quickly. I tell you, I couldn't spend days on a painting. So we've got some abstract art that I really got into, and this was such a creative freedom, and I highly recommend doing this if you're trying to find your style. I'm not saying that abstract will become your style, but what it'll do, it'll really loosen up your tendencies, if you're anything like me, to want everything to be perfect. And because abstract, it can just be so freeing, and you can really play with colour. You don't have to necessarily have exact forms or shapes, and it can be a really, really fun way of just playing with colour and shape and contrast as well, which is really important. When they talk about contrast in art, it's getting the difference between light and dark, and I'll talk about this in another video as well. But if you try and imagine one of your favourite paintings that you've done, if you converted that to, say, black and white, would it just be very, very grey looking, or would you have very strong blacks and very strong whites? And it's all about creating the contrast and trying to do that when you work with colour. So I started doing some rather crazy abstracts, lots of different styles of abstract. This is more landscapey, and these were more sort of so just creating a feeling of something. I wanted to create a feeling of like cocktail parties and food and music and things, and I went crazy. I'm not quite sure which way around this goes, that way around. A music one, sort of expressing music without actually painting instruments, and that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that. And this is more of a sort of fruity vegetable type painting. I don't know which way around these go. They could go anyway, really, couldn't they? But that was my sort of abstract phase, and I still do some abstract painting. There's another little abstract down there with one of my bokeh style paintings. But I really obviously wanted to go back to doing landscapes, and I did try in my first 100 days playing with a palette knife. So let's have a look at some palette knife paintings. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the whole 100 days that I did at the beginning of the year, but I want to just show you some of the palette knife and have a little talk about trying to use different tools for your art. So giving up the brushes, and if I can find in my drawer, just off screen. This was like my go-to little palette knife, and I just bought these cheap palette knives off, I think it was off Amazon and stuff, and actually had to glue some of them back in, but they worked really well. At first I was actually using, I think, just like a plastic spoon, just to thought, right, if I put the brushes down and try and paint with different tools to see what I come up with, and I think that's one of the really key things to finding your style, is to just experiment with lots of different materials, different paper surfaces, tools, and all sorts of different things. And so I went through this palette knife phase of just trying some, that's almost quite abstract, sort of Tokyo in the rain, some mountains again, and one of my waves, it's done in a palette knife. And after a while I was kind of still going back to wanting to work on the detail, obsessed with the detail, and I think that became a thing for me. I think it was a realization. My first realization of finding my style was I needed to have the detail of a brush to get the effects that I wanted. So I really enjoyed these, and I like really looking at some of these palette knife paintings, but I still really enjoyed just painting with a brush and having the ability to add the detail and stuff. So I continued on with the palette knife painting for quite a while, and some random ones, watercolours in between. And I started to go back to using a brush at some point. Where did I go back to using a brush? Somewhere along my 100 days. Here we go, back to my rain one. I started to go back to using a... It's all going wrong. Started going back to using a paintbrush, and that's kind of my first realisation, as I like the detail that brush gives. And although I still work with watercolour, acrylic did become my main medium, and I just went from there, and I started to just use that completely and just ran with that. So by the time that I got to the second 100-day challenge of if you don't know what the 100-day challenge is, it's just painting a painting every single day for 100 days. And it's a really good way to get you used to painting, to help you find your style, and I highly recommend it. But I think it's also really important not to stress if you miss a day or you can't complete it, or don't feel like a failure or anything like that. It is supposed to be a fun thing and help you to find what works for you, to help you find your style. So for me, I was like, although I enjoyed the palette knife, it wasn't for me as a main way of painting. It wasn't my style. So I went back to the brushes and with the acrylic, and I realized that I really enjoyed painting water and the seas. So that just became the thing that I always went back to, is like what I found easy. And I think that's one of the little tricks with finding your style, is have a think about the one thing or few things that you really enjoy painting. What's the one thing you always go back to? What's the thing that you consider easy? And that's your thing. That's the thing that hopefully you'll enjoy the most and you find easiest to do. And for me, it's water. Painting water in the sea is what I find easy. Not saying it necessarily ends up looking good. That's my daughter adding stickers. I got a Mochi award for that one. So it was painting water and painting waves and doing clouds and things like that. Although I still enjoy painting mountains and things, it's I do resonate with, as I said in my previous video, with the sea and the coast, and it just became what I painted the most with acrylic and brush. So I don't know if this video will help you or inspire you, but hopefully it will give you some suggestions on how you can find your style by just trying lots of different things. When I did my watercolor sort of Parisian style, that was inspired by another artist, and a lot of artists doing that sort of style, and I found I always struggled with it. So I was like, I just put that aside, try something new. Don't be afraid to put something aside and try something new, and try different tools like palette knives and abstracts. Really let yourself go. And then hopefully you'll be like, oh, I miss doing this. I miss painting water. I miss, doing anime, or I miss doing watercolors or whatever. I want to go back to that. And hopefully that will give you a little indication of what you enjoy and what ends up being your style. And I still don't believe that I have a style of painting, but I think that they all start to look more consistent, I think. These days. So and it is just painting water using brushes in acrylics, so that's kind of what I run with. So I don't think I've ever reached that point yet where someone would look at one of my paintings and think, yeah, that's definitely a Laura Eccleston. No, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but I know what I enjoy, I know what I find easy, and what gives me the most satisfaction. So and that's what I went with. So, and that, I still don't like that one. I can't bake trees. So yeah, but now let's have a little look at, maybe I'll go through those paintings another time for my 2 100-day project, maybe when I finish my second 100-day challenge. But this was day 54, I think. I did this one yesterday, and let's go to a time lapse of this painting. So this is my most recent painting in my challenge, and yeah, cue the time lapse. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it inspiring, and I'll see you soon for some more arty creative fun. Bye, guys.